Atamarie e te whānau or Unitarians. Good morning to our family of Unitarians. Let's begin as usual with a few minutes of quiet reflection while Frank plays the Prelude, Into My Arms by Nick Cave. Kia ora, Frank. Tēnā koutou e te whānau Unitarians o Tamaki Makaurau. Tēnā koutou e ngā manuhiri e noho nei. Tēnā koutou e ngā manuhiri on Zoom. Ko Maria Hayward ahau. Ko au te kai whakahaere mō tēnei rā. Nau mai, haere mai ki tēnei whare tapu. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā koutou katoa. Greetings and welcome to the Auckland Unitarian family. Welcome to our guests present here today. We're pleased you've decided to join us. Welcome to this special place which has been home to Auckland Unitarians for over 120 years. Welcome also to those attending via Zoom or those attending at a later time. For those of you here in person today, we offer morning tea and refreshments after the service. This is our gift of hospitality, our manaakitanga to everyone. For our online participants, I hope you too are able to remain in a group for a manaaki and a discussion after the service. Paul, I wonder if you'd like to light the chalice for us today. I'll recite the words. We light this flame to remind us love is the centre. As we grow and connect, mature and deepen, love remains the centre. When the light of truth burns all else away, love remains. What is a spiritual journey? According to AI, a spiritual journey is a personal, non-linear quest to deepen self-awareness, connect with a higher purpose, and find inner peace. The definition continues, a spiritual journey involves shifting from ego-driven living to authenticity, often marked by meditation, mindfulness, and self-reflection. The process often starts at the heart, nurturing compassion and a deeper connection to the cosmos. I quite like that definition, although a connection to the cosmos might not be the words I'd use. And churches or religion are not mentioned. I also think that it doesn't matter whether our spiritual journeys include a concept of God or religion or church. These are personal worlds, and we make our own decisions about which aspects of spirituality have relevance or meaning for us. It doesn't matter that there are differences in our spiritual journeys or beliefs or credence. In my opinion, what matters is how we live our lives and how we make decisions in our lives. What guides us? It is interesting to hear the variety of spiritual interpretations and journeys that we've been hearing from our congregation over the last few weeks. Today, I'll share my journey. Mine is not so much about waka jumping or faith church swapping. It's more about that ethereal thing, the development of my moral compass, perhaps, that steers or guides me in my life. This is today's take or theme for the service. Let us now recite together the words of our covenant, the document that connects us as Unitarians. The last three words are optional, and of course your interpretation or your personal understanding of a God or gods or no God is welcome here. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is the sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God. We pause at this time to hold and honour the very personal joys and concerns of the congregation. You are invited to come forward and speaking into the microphone, give your name, light a candle, and concisely share your joys and concerns with us. Or simply come forward to light a candle in silence. We'll alternate with people on Zoom. There is a whakatauki, a Māori expression, he atua, he tangata. We are both divine and human. This speaks to both our humanness and our spirituality, and I'll come back to this whakatauki later. For today's kōrero, I set out to write a linear story about my journey from Catholicism to atheism to agnosticism to no labels, nothing, and somehow eventually to universal Unitarianism. But I found myself writing something quite different. However, according to the AI definition that I read earlier, it does fit under that broader definition of a spiritual journey. My journey is about a goal to become a good person, or at least the best person that I can possibly be. I'm not going to apologise if this sounds smug or sanctimonious or even fatuous. I don't mean this statement in a grandiose way, just in the sense of this being a journey. I also want to talk today about the journey towards developing the degree of strength and courage that might be needed for becoming the best person that I can be, and also for developing the type of strength and courage that might be required for making the right decisions at those critical life moments, the extreme of which might even be a life or death decision, and I'll explain more about that later. So my kōrero today, as I mentioned before, it's not about spiritual waka jumping or moving from one religion to another. It's about what I need to become that thing that might be mocked by some, and I don't care, a good person who contributes positively to the world. This is the spiritual journey I want to talk about. And I think that journey began for me many decades ago. When I was in my teens, there was a very powerful television series called Holocaust. As you will know or can probably guess, it was about the Jewish extermination during World War II. The series resulted in a seminal shift in my understanding of humanity. It was when I first saw and learned about evil. I clearly recall my parents being silent during the programs, which must have been very triggering for them, as both had been young teenagers in the Netherlands when Germany occupied that country in 1940. Jonathan, just when you're ready. I also remember having quite impassioned discussions with my parents after the final episode. I had so many questions. How could this all have happened? Why didn't people stop the Germans, and so on? My parents, my father in particular, I've stuck a couple of photos up there just to entertain you. There's my dad and me, and a couple of other family members. But my father gave me very thoughtful and detailed responses. Many people, he said, didn't actually want to think about what was going on. The rounding up of Jewish people didn't affect them. They turned a blind eye. And he added, some Dutch people felt too scared to do anything. They knew they might risk their own or their families' lives. And my parents also told me a few people were actually pro-Hitler. It wasn't just a flaw in the German character. I recall my father also saying, you have to be careful about leaders like Hitler. His army had fancy uniforms. He made people feel he was sorting out Germany's problems. And with these reassurances, many people didn't hear his really dangerous messages, my father said. This was my introduction to what fascism was, its effects, and I suppose its appeal. I was about 15 at the time, and I think it might have been the first time I started thinking critically. So this was a pivotal moment in my moral development. And I was certain at that young age that I would be the brave warrior opposing evil, fighting and risking my life for good, should I find myself in a major crisis. As I got older, I started wondering, how could I be sure that I wouldn't be the person who, as my father mentioned, was either too scared to act or who turned a blind eye to evil or who didn't notice the dangerous messages? I figured that there was some sort of mental preparation I would need to do so that I could have the strength to be a moral person and to act with courage. I continued to think about good and evil. My reading, my thinking, my studies at school and perhaps mostly at uni, discussions with peers, amongst other things, all these comprised, even if accidentally, all this mental and spiritual work and contributed towards developing characteristics that I hoped would help me make the right decisions. This was my resolve. A few decades later, I had to revisit that resolve and question my moral courage. A group of former refugees that I was teaching posed this question to me. What if someone threatened to hurt, they meant rape, your daughter, mine was 4 years old at the time, if you didn't give them what they wanted, like telling them where certain people were hiding? What would you do? I became aware that some decisions might be really hard, and if the choice was between one of my children or contributing to evil, I'm pretty sure I'd save my children. But I decided I would still need to be as strong and ethical as I possibly could be. There could be other situations, not as difficult, where I would want to do the right thing. My thinking now is that we'll never know for sure how we'll react in a moment of crisis. Nevertheless, I think we have a better chance of responding with moral courage if we plan to do so beforehand, if we've thought through the process of moral decision-making. And what that TV series did for me a long time ago was to start my wish to develop a strong moral compass to enable me to not only lead a good life and to make good decisions, but also to contribute to humanity in a positive way. So this is the spiritual journey I'm talking about today. Did organised religion play any part? Well, I was already moving away from the Catholic Church by the time I'd left school. But the one thing I did like about this religion was its emphasis, at times, on social service. That is, on helping and caring for those less fortunate. I took aspects from Catholicism, as well as from my family's strong moral beliefs, and I just kept bolstering these throughout my adult life. Well, that's been the plan anyway. I became aware that the person who stood up against evil at a pivotal moment required not only a deep personal conviction, but also knowledge about what strategies might be effective in achieving this. Obviously, this didn't preoccupy my time and energy every single day or week or even month or year, but it was always there somewhere, and I kept revisiting these thoughts whenever there was an outside stimulus or trigger. Working with former refugees really pushed me along that journey. I heard many stories from people who actually had to make those decisions, and many risked their own lives to make the morally correct choice. I was moved to hear how many people did this, how courageous and kind and moral and generous human beings can be, Many years after that TV series, my father and I were having a discussion, and he expressed how there were certain political decisions, both in New Zealand and further afield, that he really worried about. He believed these sorts of decisions or policies could lead to fascism. He was always a bit of a pessimist, and I argued that we would never get fascism in the modern democratic world again. I stressed that we had learned from history. Well, I'm glad my father isn't alive today to see that he was right. Now I see the fascism springing up here, even in Aotearoa. And I do need to think about my commitment to take action against fascism, against hate. But returning to my spiritual journey, I want to reflect on the more explicit po, the Māori word for pillars or posts of support. Think about the big pillar that you see in the wharenui in the middle holding up the building. I want to think about these metaphorical pillars that I think can provide that spiritual and moral strength. I get helped in my spiritual journey along the path that Socrates called the path towards virtue, and I get helped to be that warrior-type person by engaging in various tasks. And these constitute the elements, the po, that have supported and still do support my spiritual journey. So the things, the po or the things that support me are that I try to surround myself where possible with people who have similar values. This gives me strength. I know I'm not alone. These people, these friends, also assist me with my thinking. And I'm helped in that journey by gathering authenticated facts and figures, scientific data, accurate information, truthful information about social and political and other issues. And finally, by listening to people who challenge me intellectually. And some of that I get from here, from this place, almost every week. This helps me get recharged. How else does Unitarian Universalism help me? I enjoy the challenging or inspiring talks. I enjoy the friends and kind, the reinforcement of values, the social justice work. I like the way that people in this church care for other members, always mentioning those who are unwell, remembering those who've passed, thinking about anyone who's struggling, even the ones unsaid or unnamed, but who remain in our hearts. This seems like spiritual behaviour to me too. Maybe it's this stuff, the combination of souls coming together, the rituals, the music, the morning tea, but also the stimulation, the challenges, the provocation at times. Maybe all that together is my connection to spirituality right now. But most important for me is how this process keeps me on track regarding doing good in the world, and how it sometimes transforms me towards more compassion, more understanding. And when I look at Unitarians, especially in the US, what amazing social action many of the churches there are undertaking right now. The UUA website is full of political statements and stances the church is taking about what is happening in the US, and they're providing guidance for their followers. It's the direction of good people, fighting for women's rights, fighting for the rights of minorities, immigrants and transgender people, fighting for justice and democracy, fighting ICE, opposing warmongers, fighting fascism, and marching against would-be kings and tyrants. It's the action that our principles urge of us, and I'm very proud to be part of this group of people who don't just sit in churches and pray, even if they are praying for the right things. My journey has also involved thinking about taking action. But I'm aware that none of us might take action, or that very important action, if we feel afraid or weak or vulnerable. And we also won't take action if we don't know how to, if we don't know what to do, or if we're not informed about why it is important. And we don't take action if we feel we will lose too much by doing so, for example, our own children. And finally, of course, we don't take action if we don't care enough, if we're too egocentric or not affected personally by the threat. Maybe an institution or church or group can help with overcoming some of these stumbling blocks. Or some of this work individuals can do on their own. Your journey will be different from mine. I left the Catholic Church because it wasn't offering me any guidance, any inspiration. Its emphasis and energy seemed to be on judgment, exclusion, punishment, sin, and blame. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, as we used to say when the Mass was in Latin. It's my fault, it's my fault. It really is my fault. And my concept of God, well, that idea for me may well be kindness. But where else is there spirituality among universal Unitarians? There is the music, the singing, the candles, the ritual of our Sunday services. These create a spiritual ambience. They reach us in that place that Catholics call soul. This time is a spiritual place, and it sometimes is a really calming time for me on a Sunday morning. So that's why I pledge to the Unitarians. There's my little pledge testimonial tucked into this corridor. I'll conclude now. I consider the pathway towards goodness instead of complacency to have been a spiritual journey for me. It's not about refining a religion or my idea of God. It's the journey itself that is spiritual for me. If we have time, we'll have a discussion at the end of the service where I'll invite you all to share one aspect of your own spiritual journeys. As concluding words, I'm going to read a few quotes pertinent to today's kōrero. The first is from the transcendentalist writer and Unitarian Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, and many people after him also said, "Life is a journey, not a destination." Deepak Chopra said, "The journey towards enlightenment is a journey of transformation, not just knowledge." And the Dalai Lama said about the spiritual journey towards enlightenment, "This is a journey of love, compassion, and understanding." Dorothy Day was an American pacifist, social activist, and actually a Catholic. And she said about the importance of our small efforts to do good in the world, "People say," she said, "what is the sense of our small effort? They cannot see that we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that. No one has a right to sit down and feel hopeless. There's too much work to do." And finally, I want to repeat the whakatauki that I mentioned earlier. He atua, he tangata. We are both divine and human. Perhaps the author of that proverb was a transcendentalist without knowing it. This whakatauki highlights the duality of existence, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, encouraging us to look for the divine in ourselves and others. We are spiritual beings immersed in a human experience. Paul, I wonder if you could come up and extinguish the chalice for us while we recite the words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. So the discussion topic for today is easy. Share one aspect of your own spiritual journey with the group. So once you've organised yourselves into groups of about 5, I thought I'd just go over the discussion rules again just to remind you. Keep your comments brief. Ensure that everyone has a turn. Listen, but don't make lengthy comments about what other people say, although you can affirm with a brief comment during your own speaking time. And when everybody's had a turn, or passed, if they don't wish to speak, then you can have another turn. So it's just really a sense of making sure that everyone who wants to speak is given the opportunity. And we do have about